Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. It is now 4:30, and so respecting everyone's time and respecting the time of our wonderful speaker today, we are going to go ahead and get started. I'll begin with some brief messages, some brief comments, and then from there, I will open the floor to Dr. Mark Umbreit to present today on spirituality, peacemaking, and justice. So, thank you for joining us today for the third annual lecture on spirituality and justice for the MSU Folio Speaker Series on Spirituality. For those who don't know me, I am Morgan Shipley, the inaugural Folio Endowed Chair of Spirituality and Associate Chair for Undergraduate Studies at Michigan State University. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historic Indigenous communities in Michigan, for Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who are forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold Michigan State University more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. Additionally, I would like to thank today's co-sponsors, the Center for Integrative Studies in the Arts and Humanities, the College of Arts and Letters, the Department of Religious Studies, Peace and Justice Studies, and the School of Social Work, all at Michigan State University. Initiated in honor of Father Jake Folio, an alumnus, former faculty member, longtime priest, and mentor to countless MSU student athletes and coaches, the MSU Folio Speaker Series on Spirituality offers the opportunity to explore the manifold meanings and applications of spirituality in the contemporary world through lectures, talks, workshops, and experiential events. Building on many of the themes from today's talk, please consider joining us for 3 upcoming events sponsored or co-sponsored by the Folio Speaker Series. They're listed here on this front page as well. On March 21st from 7 to 8 p.m., Dr. Shannon D. Williams will present on American's Real Sister Act, excavating the hidden history of Black Catholic nuns in the United States for the 2024 American Catholic Thought and Culture Endowed Lecture Series. On March 28th from 7 to 8:30 p.m., Professor John Coyne, Associate Professor of Religious Studies at Michigan State University, will host an in-person with virtual option interview with Professor Santosh Raut on Buddhism and social justice. And on Wednesday, April 10th, from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon, Professor Jeremy Ingalls will offer a talk and workshop on meditation, embodiment, and mindfulness. More information, including locations and registration links, will be provided in a thank you email that will be sent to all attendees following today's talk. Established to advance Father Jake's commitment to others, to the academic study of the human spirit, and in relation to his efforts to expand understanding of spirituality beyond strictly religious concerns to the myriad ways humans seek meaning and define what matters most in their lives and to their communities, I am thrilled and honored to welcome Professor Mark Umbreit for the MSU Folio Speaker Series on Spirituality's 3rd annual lecture on spirituality and justice. Professor Umbreit has played a foundational role in not only advancing the study of peacemaking, but also, and much like Father Jake, expanding our understanding of spirituality and its profound connection to healing and projects of restorative justice. Dr. Mark Umbreit is a professor emeritus and founding director of the Center for Restorative Justice and Peacemaking at the University of Minnesota. Mark serves on the faculty of the Center for Spirituality and Healing in the Academic Health Center at the University of Minnesota, teaching courses on peace building through mindfulness practice and forgiveness and healing. He also serves as a visiting professor at the Marquette University Law School in Milwaukee, teaching a course on peacemaking and spirituality. In past years, Mark has also served as a fellow of the International Center for Healing and the Law and a fellow of the Center for Contemplative Practice and Society. He's an internationally recognized practitioner and scholar with more than 40 years of experience as a facilitator of dialogue, peacemaker, trainer, teacher, researcher, and author of 12 books and more than 200 other publications in the fields of restorative justice, meditation, spirituality, forgiveness, and peacemaking. Over the past 3 decades, Dr. Umbreit has provided consultation and conducted training seminars and lectures in 29 countries throughout Asia, Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and North and South America in nearly every state of the United States. As a practitioner, he periodically facilitates peace-building circles in the community and restorative dialogues between family survivors of homicide or other victims of severe violence and the offender in their quest for healing and strength. Over recent years, he has worked with colleagues in Brazil, Ireland and Northern Ireland, Italy, Japan, Liberia, Israel-Palestine, and Taiwan on peace-building initiatives. In recent years, he has been working extensively with the Archdiocese of Minneapolis-St. Paul in the wake of criminal and civil litigation related to a long history of massive clergy sexual abuse. Restorative justice was listed in the final court settlement agreement as a key requirement of fostering accountability and healing. Mark recently worked as a senior international consultant with the United Nations Development Program and the Ministry of Justice in Turkey to support their legislative efforts to implement victim offender mediation throughout the country. At the National Restorative Justice Conference in June of 2013, Dr. Umbreit was elected the founding president of the new National Association for Community and Restorative Justice in the United States and was reelected to a second term. Dr. Umbreit has recently worked with the United Nations Development Program and the Criminal Justice and Corrections Systems in Brazil. In September of 2019, the International Association of Schools of Social Work recognized Dr. Umbreit among the 50 most notable social workers in American history based on his global impact and as a practitioner and scholar. Mark also ranked among the 50 most influential contemporary social work faculty in the United States by the Journal of Social Service Research. In recognition of his decades of service in peacemaking, Legacy Magazine dedicated a feature piece on Mark in their summer 2017 issue. Exploring Mark's organic teaching methodology through the energy of storytelling, Legacy Magazine creates a snapshot of Mark's pioneering research and its impact on our communities, both locally and globally. A Q&A session, for which I will act as moderator, will follow the talk. Please feel free to use this Zoom feature to post questions during or after the talk. And with that, please join me in welcoming Professor Mark Umbreit. Mark, if you'd like to unmute and join us via camera, the floor is yours.
Okay.
I can hear you perfectly. So I'm
Okay.
gonna go off camera, but I'm right here. And if you need me throughout the talk, I will jump in as appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Morgan, for that nice introduction. When I hear that introduction, I mean, I have done all that stuff and actually more, but I want to make something real clear. I'm not here, and because I've had that experience doesn't make me some expert on everything, on spirituality, on peacemaking, on justice. I've worked in many cultures. I've been highly influenced by Anishinaabe folks, by Lakota, Dakota, and many other tribal traditions in this country and some others. And all of that does not make me some mastermind on that stuff. It has literally humbled me, tamed my ego, which we'll be talking a lot about. And it's made me aware of how, for so much of my life, I've lived up here in my head. You know, academia, both for professors and students, really gets us up here and pulls us away from down here. And I've worked to really connect at a deeper level. And some of the deepest things I've learned over the years and right up to this minute have come from cultures that the dominant culture, which I'm part of, white culture, European background, is guilty of massive genocide, ethnic cleansing all over this country. You know, Morgan, you mentioned recognizing folks in your territory and some of the harm done there. That's true in Minnesota. It's all over the place. So I begin there to put people at ease, and I will talk to you not as some erudite scholar, but as a real human being. Yeah, I've done those things. I feel blessed that I have had the opportunity to have been invited into so many cultures and countries. And I've been invited in. Those are not just speaking at academic conferences. There's been very little of that over the years, actually. But I've been invited in, and that's been a real honor. And inevitably, even though people are inviting me in to get some of my thoughts or to consult or to teach, I literally leave those settings feeling so deeply enriched in terms of what that has given me, frankly, and how we've shared each other's cultures and vulnerabilities, frankly. I'd like to begin by being very clear on talking about some of the meanings of terms, you know, spirituality, peacemaking, justice. Let me begin by spirituality. When I speak of spirituality, I speak of it as a large tent, huge, that includes the whole range from the most conservative evangelical in any setting, not just Christian, but Buddhists can be very conservative too, depending on different sects. Muslims can be. It's all over the place. Nobody owns that. To the most open and the most progressive, everything in between. Spirituality, and let me make this real clear. You know, I don't come to you as some new agey person out of the 60s that, you know, is into all this radical stuff and, alternative spirituality. I grew up in Chicago in a conservative, evangelical, Republican, Baptist family. And I have to say, in a good way. It was the most diverse church then and is now in Chicago, Baptist Church. I met my first Palestinians in Sunday school. I met people from other cultures as part of my Sunday school experience. Now, that's not where I'm at this point. I got to make that clear too. That's my rich tradition, and it has had a profound effect on me. And I am still connected with it, not as Christianity as a religion, but in terms of the incredible wisdom of Jesus the Rabbi, who has tremendous wisdom, had it then, has it now. But his wisdom does not cancel out the wisdom of many Jewish prophets, of Muhammad, of Buddha, of Taoist wisdom. Deep spiritual wisdom is not owned by any culture. It is part of the fabric of humanity. And spirituality at its deepest level is not about you must believe this. And that's what a lot of religions focus on. Not just Christianity particularly, but others too. You must believe this. That's not what spirituality is about. Spirituality is a way of life, a way of being, a way of honoring this incredible mystery that we are part of. It's not about going to a building and now let's be in a spiritual place for an hour and a half on a Sunday or a Saturday or whenever. No, no, no. And this is what my indigenous friends have taught me over and over again. Everything is spiritual. My deepest spiritual moments are when I'm walking in a forest or out in nature. And I'm a walker. I do miles and miles of walking every day. And that's just part of, and I don't do it just to, for exercise. I mean, it's good exercise, obviously. It's a way of calming my mind, of connecting at a deeper spiritual level. Spirituality is profoundly all-inclusive. It doesn't exclude people because of what they say or rituals or whatever. So for me and many people, religion has been a bridge to a deeper sense of spirituality. But honestly, for many, many people, perhaps some of you, religion has been a tremendous blockage, obstacle. There are so many, many people, including some people in my own family, and many I know from different countries, that have been deeply wounded by religion, either emotionally or physically wounded, and can no longer connect with religion. I have a very hard time connecting with popular expressions of my root tradition nowadays, the way it is manipulated, and evil things, bad things are done in the name of religion. But one should not allow that to cover up tremendous wisdom that is in my root tradition and all traditions. So first, that I want to distinguish between spirituality and religion. Secondly, peacemaking. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you, and it's really in the title of my courses I teach and have for many decades, it's really more about peace building. Peacemaking is entering into stopping the violence through peace agreements. Peacemaking is very important. Peacemaking inevitably involves departments of state and high-level diplomats and politicians to end the violence, getting agreement to end the violence. At a smaller level and just a temporary level, there's current efforts to develop a form of peacemaking in the Mideast with Israel and Hamas. And it's really not a peace agreement at this point. It's some kind of temporary pause or ceasefire, or maybe something more than that. But whatever they develop, that is not building peace. That is simply stopping the violence for a while. Peace building is quite different. Peace building are efforts to rebuild stitch by stitch from the ground up relationships between people who used to and still are oftentimes committed to killing each other in each other's communities. The people I've worked with over the years and currently do in Israel and Palestine, groups like Combatants for Peace, the Parents Circle, many groups like that on both sides. These are Palestinian fighters and Israeli fighters and families who have had their loved ones killed by the other fighters, who have reached a point of saying, we got to stop this insanity. All our blood is red. We all love our children. We all love our communities. And these people have little respect, if any, for their political leadership on either side, in Israel or Palestine. They are coming together, working together, sitting down together in a circle, sharing their pain, their stories. They're beginning to listen to each other, not in a debate form of you must listen to me and agree with me. No, no, no. Of trying to calm themselves, humble themselves, to hear the pain of the other and to share their pain. And when I first heard of this process 25 years ago, I thought, oh, give me a break. That sounds like too good to be true. That's going to have no effect. Well, I'm long past that. I have far more confidence in the hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of families in the Mideast and other places, of former combatants, former people who have lost their loved ones from the other side, who are coming together. I have more confidence in them building peace in those societies, which will take time, building it stitch by stitch. I have more confidence in them than political leadership. The political leadership typically is what you see in news and they get media attention. A peace agreement's been made, like the historic Oslo agreement between Palestinians and Israelis, or peace agreements in Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement. And those peace agreements have oftentimes resulted in a pause, but have never gotten into the full depth of what they were meant to be. And for example, the peace agreement in Northern Ireland, which I witnessed very much part of that. I've spent a lot of time working with Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland, is hanging on by a thread. It's still hanging in there, and it has had a huge impact. And so my point is, it's not one or the other, it's both. You need politicians and policymakers to end the violence, to make peace, to get peace agreements. But peace agreements without more people-to-people diplomacy through peace building often goes nowhere. You need both. Peace building is from the ground up. Peacemaking is more from the upper level down to stop the violence. And justice, in my experience with restorative justice, having been fortunate to have been involved in the movement from its very inception, when nobody took it serious or even recognized it, now it's an international movement in more than 60 countries. There's so many different meanings to justice. You know, as these concerns have grown over the years, there's been such a tendency to focus more and more, and let's get advanced training. Let's learn new techniques. Let's learn better ways of bringing people together, either individually or collectively. And techniques are important. But I want to be real clear on something. What's even more important is the hardest work, which is focusing on our presence, the energy of our being with people, the tone of our voice, our breath work, our mindfulness. When people over the years have come to my 5-day advanced training in restorative dialogue, in crimes of severe violence and political violence, when they've come to Minnesota, many are kind of surprised because they don't learn a lot of techniques, advanced techniques. They learn a lot of ways of being present with themselves, of working with breath, of small moments of meditation or centering, learning ways to humble their and tame their ego, to listen deeply to others. So I hope that has given you a sense already of a very different approach. I'm not your standard guy in talking about this stuff. If you're looking for a standard academic approach with a 50-slide PowerPoint presentation on all the theories and concepts, you're not going to get it from me. Sorry, folks. I've written a lot and all that. And if you want more in-depth stuff and research, I've done lots of research. You can go to some of my textbooks. But one of my most recent books, it's the shortest one to read. It's available to anybody in communities. You don't have to be in academia. It's called, and I certainly would not have gotten tenure with a title like this. It's called Dancing with the Energy of Conflict and Trauma. Letting go, finding peace. And it's all done in the mode of storytelling, again, which I've learned from my indigenous friends and other cultures. They're real life stories, some from my own family, most from people I've worked with all over the world and including in the United States. Stories that when you first hear about them, you think, oh, come on, can't be. These are people who have killed each other, who have had their children killed, their parents, who their communities have been deeply impacted. And through coming together face to face, not because I said they should do it. No, no, no. They realized after so much pain and trauma, they have come to me and others that I've trained over the years and said, I think I really need to go to the source and meet this person. He's still in prison, or she is. And I need to have time with them personally and let them know the pain they've caused in my life. And I need to learn more about them. Why did they do this? And that stuff used to be absolutely taboo. When I did the first cases like that in the 1990s, there was not a single state in the US or any other countries that allowed that to be done. Um, Actually, even in the late 80s, there were some states, including in the South and Mississippi and some other states, where there were parents of murdered children who wanted to go to prison to meet the man who killed their daughter. And the warden at that time would not allow it. When I was asked to do this in some of the initial states, the wardens wouldn't allow it. But when they checked me out and knew my background and that I worked a lot with the Department of Justice for many years, it was in 1990 that um, I think it was in 1990 that I did the first such case in the state of Rhode Island by a woman, Sue Mulhan, whose son was murdered. And she was the most voiceful, influential victim advocate in the media. And she was totally pushing for never letting out men who killed or women. But she had reached the point that she felt she really needed to meet this individual. And that case was referred to me by people in Rhode Island who I had trained. And that set in motion a remarkable journey where after a lot of preparation in those kind of cases, I spent months to years, sometimes 2 years preparing people, meeting, talking, getting to know them before ever bringing them together. And they only come together when they feel ready, not when I say, okay, now you must come together. Never. This is absolutely voluntary. And oftentimes involves the presence of support people, therapists, counselors, priests, minister, whatever. And this eventually came together in a way that I don't have time to tell you all at this point, but it was so dramatic that it ended in a way that there still were some leftover business to do. We weren't sure what to do, but I think it was 6 months later, Sue called me up and said, Mark, I really want a follow-up session. Can you arrange it? And I said, sure. I'll see if Alfred, the man who killed her son, is willing. And if the prison will let us in. And we arranged the follow-up. And at the end of the follow-up session, which was far more emotional and intense than I would have ever imagined, Sue Mulhan, and I can use these names because this is in public record, in publications and on the media. She literally looked at Alfred, and up to this point, she had refused to forgive him and made it clear to him she cannot forgive him. She paused, had tears in her eyes, and said, Alfred, I forgive you. I let you go. I cannot carry this bitterness and hatred in my heart. And Alfred just was sort of stunned. And he put his hand out on the table. And Sue put her hand on top of his. And just bent over. And they both were in tears, forgiving each other. It was powerful. Never in any of the preparation over years had I even though I teach courses on forgiveness and heal, never did I talk to them how you really should forgive. It'll really help. There's research that shows it can be helpful. Never. It's never do that. If they ask me things about forgiveness, I'll be glad to mention. If they ask me about, is there any research, I'll be glad to tell them in an honest way, not overhyping it. But there's so many stories like that I could tell you that we don't have time in this format. Where are we at time-wise, Morgan? Just so I can pace myself.
We're about 4:55.
Oh boy, time goes by quick. 4:55. That's 3:55 my time. Okay. The what I was getting at was, that so much focus in all professions, but particularly in justice areas, is focused on let's get better techniques to persuade, to convince, to challenge, to change. And there's many people who want dialogue with the other side, which basically is translated as we want dialogue to tell you what the truth is. I am part of a bipartisan citizens movement, which is in nearly every state. Sure, it's in Michigan and many chapters, called Braver Angels, which bring together blues and reds, conservatives and Republicans, those who to this date firmly believe in our past president and sincerely believe he is the most helpful, beneficial, caring president the United States has ever had, and those who are vehemently opposed to that, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly people of color who just cannot deal with that at all. But these are people who, after a bit of preparation on calming their egos, listening to each other, not convincing each other, just listening to each other, maybe finding a speck of truth in the other side, maybe finding a speck of weakness in their own stuff. They come together. This is being done all over the country. It's remarkable. And that to me is a part of rebuilding our culture as a society in a big way. That to me is what real peacemaking is about, authentic peace building. And dealing with justice in a difficult but real, earthy way. Let me just look at my notes here. What I think at this point, um, Morgan, let's get ready to show my Taming the Ego video. This is a talk I did on YouTube, a few years ago, and it really pulls together a lot of what I've been sharing with you. And it's about how supremely important it is to be, there are over the history of this country. I mean, I can remember this, I'm a child of the 1960s and the civil rights movement down south and the anti-Vietnam War, all of that stuff. And there are many more people than I ever thought who are advocating peace and organizing demonstrations. I was one of them. But there are many who had violence in the rhetoric of peacemaking. Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk, who had a profound effect on this peace movement and spirituality, spoke of this, how violence can be in our words and our energy. The words coming out of our mouth are peace, and we got to work things out. But the is not peace. It's judgment. It's condemnation. It's you must see things the way I see it. And this video is about moving beyond that. And I'll share a dramatic case I did, a murder case. I've done those over the years. And something happened very dramatic, and I'll cut it there. Let's go right into this. This is about a 17-minute talk. And this is on YouTube for any of you who want to see this later or show it in a class or a talk you're giving or a club you're with. You can easily pull it off of YouTube. I have a lot of things on YouTube, but this is the one that really addresses this kind of topic we're talking about very directly. So let's go on, okay? Because of the time frame, I've brushed over a lot of the real basic stuff. I want to just add a few of those things in there. For any people who want to really learn more about restorative justice, it is important to get some of the basic training. Again, it's not instead of training, it's about going beyond just training. And for example, restorative justice is a way of addressing the harm caused to people and communities. And the emphasis is, wherever possible, providing opportunities for the person who caused the harm, oftentimes called the offender, to meet with the people who were harmed. Never forcing that, never requiring that, never having judges saying you must do this or probation. It is absolutely voluntary. And for offenders, realistically, nothing's totally voluntary. It's make it as least coercive as possible. If they're in the justice system, every step they take, there's an element of coercion. you should do this or whatever. But give them options. If they don't want to do it, they still got to pay restitution or they got to do other kind of consequences, but never force them together. It's always, most restorative justice cases, the thousands and thousands out in the world today, most of them are nonviolent offenses, nonviolent felonies like burglary and theft, common assault, and a lot of misdemeanors. There's been a growing number of more serious, violent cases that I've been mentioning, but that's still the majority. It's way more today than it used to be. Again, in 1990, when I did the first case in Minnesota, there was no other state or country that had protocol to allow that. Today, after the research I did in my book on facing violence that came out about 10, 15 years ago, there's now, I think, I could be wrong in this, but I think it's around 35 states, it's probably more actually, that have formal protocol in their Department of Corrections that gives victims the opportunity to meet the person who harmed them, who killed their loved one or hurt them, and if that person's in prison. And there's some protocol you've got to go through and some advanced training for that. But again, I don't want to give you the impression that all restorative justice is these real violent situations I've been sharing with you. It's the opposite. Most restorative justice is with far more minor cases. And personally, I feel the only focus on that is to really be underutilizing the enormous power and potential of restorative justice. Some of the earliest critics of restorative justice from victim advocacy movements in Europe as well as here really thought restorative justice sounded like some thinly veiled offender treatment program, just using victims as props. But once they saw restorative justice being asked and provided in a good way by highly trained people in crimes of severe violence, they very much supported that, because so many victims of severe violence get no attention from the courts, get no services. So restorative justice today is all over the map. It began in the late 1980s, mid 80s, and throughout the last century and into the early part of this century. It began primarily with juvenile justice and then adult criminal justice. But for the last, 10, 15 years, it has branched out in so many areas. It's in all kinds of areas. One of the largest applications of restorative justice in all states and many other countries is in school systems, in elementary systems, high schools, colleges even, to deal with conflicts that come up. Another huge area is in public health settings, community conflicts, human rights issues, and in major international conflicts. Even during the conservative Bush presidency, the guidelines for our State Department giving out USAID grants to support peace building and peacemaking in different regions of the world where there were major conflicts. Part of the protocol is they must address restorative justice and offer restorative justice training as part of rebuilding a focus on the whole rule of law within these countries. Restorative justice was that much accepted. Restorative justice is neither a liberal or a conservative thing. It tends to be identified more with people of more liberal perspective, but there are some arch conservatives that passionately believe in this. This is about real justice. The left and liberal leaning folks have as much BS in a lot of their stuff and their talk as people from the far right. Nobody's got a monopoly on this. This is going beyond that. Let's look at what really is happening. And restorative justice is ultimately a way of giving citizens a personal day in court, not just having lawyers decide everything and you're sitting on the sidelines. But if you choose, and only if you choose, you can get right in there. You can sit down to the person who harmed you with other community people, oftentimes, together with community people and the offender. You can decide on a penalty, a way of holding this person accountable, and they need to agree to it too. It's really amazing. It's one of the most beautiful expressions of restorative justice today is the circle process. circles, healing circles, talking circles, indigenous communities, and colleagues and friends among the Lakota, Ojibwa, Crow, Cheyenne. It just goes on and on. And this is also reflected in other cultures that use the circle process in different ways. In Palestinian culture, Turkish culture. I mean, it's all over. In the way conflicts, even in colonial America, by the way, when there were conflicts in the community, even when people were hurt badly, the last place in the world they would take it would be to lawyers and courts. The first place they'd take it to, overwhelmingly, was to respected elders in the religious community. And those elders would bring together the people who were in conflict, and other people from the community or the congregation could witness it, like in a circle or some setting where they could view it. And together they would come up with some, and with the input of elders, they would come up with some plan to repair the harm. And so that the person who caused the harm could be reintegrated in the community, because they needed each other far more in those days than nowadays. Restorative justice, a lot of the work I've done in recent years, as mentioned in the introduction, was an area I never thought I'd be working in. Clergy sex abuse. Oh my God. That historically has been such a massive issue. It still is right up to this moment. It's usually identified with clergy abuse within the Catholic Church, but that's where the most volume is. But it's all over it. My mother, coming from a conservative Baptist background, was a victim of that with one of the most high-ranking ministers in her congregation and just her whole statewide association. And that, and in the Archdiocese of Minneapolis and St. Paul, which is the largest archdiocese in the state of Minnesota, is the only archdiocese, I believe, in the country, if not the world, that at this point has a restorative justice staff person in the archdiocese who is a former victim of clergy sex abuse, who is promoting restorative justice as a healing perspective to help individuals and congregations that are struggling with this. And the work I did, and my work was very much in the background, training others, worked with lots of congregations that were beginning to incorporate restorative justice as a way of just being a congregation, of just dealing with the daily, monthly, weekly flow of conflict within any organization. Of when there's conflict, we don't set it aside. We put it out there and openly sit in a circle, openly talk about it, not debate, humble ourselves, listen to each other, and try to find a way to repair the harm.